hymn today is Silent Night.
Which is not what New Year's is going to be.
That is true.
Was it happening? Is Ave Maria, is that a Christmas? Is that considered a Christmas song?
Yes, it is.
Ave Maria, gratia plena. Yeah, I guess it's technically a Christmas.
I saw it on a Christmas album for this person, and I was like, I don't know if that's, if that's...
Because it's about Mary.
Okay.
Mary's generally associated more with Christmas than anything else, because that's pretty much all she ever did. In the story.
That's weird.
I mean, it's true. She shows up at the beginning when Jesus is born, and that's like the main purpose of her character.
That's what she's there for.
In
Did
the
she do
story.
anything else?
I mean, she also.
I mean, she showed up at.
She raised him, right?
Yeah, I mean, she showed up at the crucifixion too.
Oh, okay. But like other than that, it was just like at birth.
But that's like the only time you see her in the text is when she's giving birth and when she's at the crucifixion. And like a couple times in the Gospels when she shows up and Jesus is like, I can't talk to her.
Go away, mama. Do you think that was
I
an awkward
can't.
relationship?
That's so funny.
It's like a text from your mom that you don't really want to answer.
How do we get on this topic? Silent Night.
Awkward.
That's right. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child, the holy infant so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night, shepherds quake at the sight, glories stream from heaven afar, heavenly hosts sing hallelujah. Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is born. Silent night, holy night, Son of God, love's pure light, radiant beams from thy holy face, with the dawn of redeeming grace. Jesus, Lord, at thy birth. Jesus, Lord, at thy
Do people sing that whole thing when they go caroling?
birth. Probably not.
Okay.
Did you want to do caroling?
I think that's a very good question.
I was shorter than I thought it was going to be.
I thought it was going to be longer, but it was still longer than a carol.
Go Carol.
I can't carol. I can't sing, so I'd just be like,
You be the one playing the bell.
All right.
I thought it sounded I have water from that.
Park the Hero was
There's only 3
very
verses.
long, apparently. It's longer than I thought.
Although sometimes people sing the first verse over again at the end. Sometimes people sing it in English, then sing it in
We have a
German.
stick of butter here.
What?
Stille Nacht.
Should I get a water?
Yes.
Hey, can you give me one of those sticks of butters?
Yeah, I got
Sticks of butters.
Wait, no, me too.
Ugh.
Could you hand me one of those cookies and a bottle of water?
Back or Hey, Caleb, you should throw me water.
Wait, what do you want? A cookie?
Water and a cookie. One of the black ones.
What?
Hey, don't be racist,
The
Steven.
offset, the off-brand. Hey, I'll take a brown cookie.
How's that reason?
Because it's black.
Hey,
guess
what's
Black
up,
cookie over the white cookie or the brown cookie.
Water, Caleb. It's like the
It's black and white.
potato patch.
Look to the cookie, Elaine. Look to the cookie.
Okay, a brown cookie.
I don't know.
Technically, black only exists in one place.
Caleb.
Everything else is dark brown.
Space.
That shit? No. Black holes.
Space is navy.
Black holes. What?
It's navy
What?
blue. Space is navy.
What?
Have you seen that thing about that new black material they've created? That sucks out 99.99% of light?
Yeah. Oh, that's like a spray stuff?
I think it's like a carbon fiber material.
That doesn't sound smart.
They just absorbs it.
What do they use it for?
So far, just aesthetic stuff.
That's
That's what I can tell. I haven't read a whole lot about it, but it seemed like the only thing they mentioned was like this architect is going to use it to like make this nightscape thing on one of the buildings he's working on.
It'd be
Batman.
cool to see it in like movie theaters.
Batman.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
That would be so dark, though.
Okay. So the theology of Silent Night, pretty straightforward, simple song.
Talk about Mary.
Yeah. What's it talking about?
Mary.
What is the Silent Night?
That
That is
night
the
when
reference.
Jesus was born and all the
Wait, don't
people
go.
were like,
The whole
Yeah. The night when Jesus.
Oh my goodness.
It was
Hey, baby.
So Silent Night, Holy Night, all is calm, all is bright. Round yon virgin, mother and child. So
so get Mary and the baby. Right? Wait, or no.
all is calm around the
Mary and
virgin.
the baby.
And you're missing it.
Yeah, this is a little weird.
just no boat.
Holy infant, so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace.
Foreshadowing.
I don't know if it's actually that. I think it's just
It feels like foreshadowing.
the idea being that this
That's
baby
super
is
early,
different. Silent Night, Holy Night, shepherds quake at the sight.
Foreshadowing.
What sight are they quaking at?
The knights.
Good night.
Well, really the star, but or the angels.
That's what he
angels,
said.
yeah.
Glory stream from heaven afar, heavenly hosts sing hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Oh.
The angels are like singing.
Christ the Savior is born, Christ the Savior is born. Again, pretty straightforward.
Mhm.
Silent Night, Holy Night, Son of God, loves pure light. Biblical reference to?
Moses. Exodus.
No.
When he created
When
the
he puts the
light.
clock behind? Oh, yeah, that's it, I guess. Well, I mean, I'm just saying because God's, you can't look upon his face, but because he's man now.
Would it make more sense
You
if there's a
can't.
semicolon after
But there's still
God?
radiance coming from him because he is like
Yeah.
the essence of God. See what I'm saying?
I was thinking John 1.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
In him was life, and the life was the light of men.
Okay.
And when the light shines, darkness cannot. Radiant beams from thy holy face with the dawn of redeeming grace.
Foreshadowing. Yeah,
Yeah, foreshadowing.
all of it is.
It's poetic language talking about the glory that is bestowed upon the baby Jesus. Sweet little baby Jesus. Jesus, Lord, at thy birth.
I'm sorry.
Jesus, Lord, at thy birth. Joseph Mohr was born in the lovely city of Salzburg, Austria in 1792. As a boy, he was an active chorister in the Cathedral of Salzburg.
Is
In
that
1815.
Question.
Yeah.
Is that where Salisbury steak was invented?
Yes.
I believe so.
Cool.
Other question. How active can you be as a chorister?
What?
I said,
Very.
how active can you be as a chorister?
Interesting.
As active as you want.
As active as Joseph Mohr was.
1818, that's the...
I know how to drink.
It's okay, Steven. I still don't know how to. Mm-hmm. Mainly water.
Yeah, I drink water.
In 1815, Mohr was ordained to the priesthood of the Roman Catholic Church. Following his ordination, he served various parishes in the Salzburg area. It was while serving as an assistant priest in 1818 at the newly erected Church of St. Nicholas in Obernordorf, in the region of Tyrol, high in the beautiful Alps, that Mohr wrote the text of this favorite of all Christmas carols. Yes, Mohr was a Catholic. They can be Christians too. What? That's why it's not married?
That's why it's about Mary.
Something about...
That's why it's about Mary?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, but...
Father Mohr and Franz Gruber, the village schoolmaster and church organist, had often talked about the fact that the perfect Christmas hymn had never been written. With this goal in mind, and after he had received word that his own church organ would not function, Father Mohr decided that he must write his own Christmas hymn immediately, in order to have music for that special Christmas Eve Mass, and to avoid disappointing his faithful congregations. Upon completing the text, he took his words to Franz Gruber, who exclaimed when he saw them, "Friend Mohr, you have found it the right song, God be praised." Soon Gruber completed the task of writing the right tune for the new text. His simple but beautiful music blended perfectly with the spirit of Father Mohr's words. The hymn was completed in time for the Christmas Eve Mass, and Father Mohr and Franz Gruber sang this hymn to the accompaniment of Gruber's guitar. The hymn made a deep impact upon the parishioners, even as it has on succeeding generations. The passing of time seems only to add to its appeal. Neither Mohr nor Gruber intended that the hymn would be used outside of their little mountain village. However, it is reported that within a few days after the Christmas Eve Mass, the organ repairman, Karl Machen of Zillerthal, a well-known organ builder of the area, came to the church and obtained a copy of the new hymn. Through his influence, the carol spread throughout the entire Tyrol region, where it became popular as Tyrolean folk song. Soon, various performing groups, such as the well-known Strasser Children's Quartet, began using the hymn in concert throughout Austria and Germany. In 1838, it first appeared in the United States, it first appeared in a German hymnal, where it was titled "A Hymn of Unknown Origin." It was first heard in the United States in 1839, when a family of Tyrolean singers, the Rainers, used the music during their concert tour. Soon it was translated into English as well as into other languages. At least 8 different English translations are known today. The carol is presently sung in all of the major languages of the world and is a universal favorite wherever songs of the Christmas message are sung. The translation by John F. Young is the version most widely used in this country. Young was born in Pittston, Hennepin County, Maryland, on October 30th, 1820. He was ordained to the Episcopal Church and served a number of years as a bishop in the state of Florida. Throughout his church ministry, he had a keen interest in sacred music. This translation of Mohr's text first appeared in 1863 in Clark Hollister's Service and Tune Book.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, if it was called the Hymn of Unknown Origin, how do they know it's from Joseph Mohr?
Somebody went and did some work finding. So when they published that hymnal, they just published it because they didn't know where it came from. But then a historian said, "Hey, let's figure out where this came from." They traced it back.
How'd he die? Did it say?
No, don't know.
Is Franz... Okay, because that name sounded really familiar. That's not the name of a villain from one of the...
Hans
Die Hard
Gruber is the first Die Hard villain.
That's what I was about to say. I was like, that...
Very, very close, yes.
I thought I was losing it.
I thought the same thing.
It's a good movie for the holidays.
True, it is my favorite Christmas movie. Alright. So today we're going to finish Micah. And then we can either, up to you guys, I am all set to go on Nahum. And we could probably do all of Nahum today after finishing Micah. Or we can hang out and talk about anything else you've been thinking about. Random question time, study something else, talk about the Christmas story. I have a lesson somewhere here on my computer about commonly misunderstood or misremembered facts about the Christmas story. That sort of thing. But it's up to you. So we can decide after we finish Micah what we want to do. So if you have your notes from last week with Micah, you're going to want to go in them to chapter 5.
So Frank, why do you laugh this way?
I don't know. This is really running. Hey, take me aside.
No.
Somebody remind me, what's Micah unique? How do we remember him?
Wasn't he the naked one?
Yes, he was the naked one.
Yes.
What does that mean? Like he was like literally naked, or he just didn't have clothes?
Sorry?
Well, that's the same thing. Was he like naked,
Like he prophesied naked to
prophesied
lament
naked.
the destruction coming to Israel.
It's just the symbol of total submission to God.
Oh, like how when people got mad and they like ripped all their clothes off.
Yeah.
And he was the guy who talked about something in Revelation. But
Yeah, he talked a lot about the kingdom that was coming. That was kind of where we finished off last week with the destruction, but also the promises of the kingdom for the remnant. And then chapter 5 we picked up, and that's like probably the most well-known verse of Micah. There's 3 really well-known verses in Micah. The first one we covered last week with they shall beat their swords into plowshares, their spears into pruning hooks. Like the kingdom is of God in eternity is going to be so peaceful and wonderful that there will be no needs for weapons. So go ahead and turn them into agricultural implements.
speaking of Micah, did he write that like that on purpose? Like exactly opposite of what Joel?
What Joel did? Probably.
Okay.
Yeah, I would guess that was
Joel
Holy Spirit influence.
Because I thought that was really cool.
Micah 5:2, probably the most well-known one. But you, O Bethlehem Ephrathah, who are too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you shall come forth for me one who is to be ruler in Israel, whose coming forth is from of old, from the ancient times, the ancient days. This is, spoiler alert. Anyone?
About what? What did you say?
Who is this ruler?
Is it Jesus?
Yeah, it's Jesus. How do we know that?
Because
Bethlehem.
Yeah, right. So that
he's
coming from
the
Bethlehem,
clans of Judah,
from the lands of Judah, ruler promised
ruler of
from way
Israel,
back.
coming forth in ancient days.
Matthew specifically says so. Like Herod asks his priests, "Do we know where this ruler's supposed to be born?" And they're like, "Yeah, the prophet Micah said it. He'll be born in Bethlehem." And then they quote Micah 5:2. And then he goes and tries to kill all of the 2-year-olds in Bethlehem because
Why not?
he doesn't want him to be alive. So yeah, plenty of textual evidence and just context tells you, yeah, this is about Jesus. Keep reading though. Somebody read 3 through 5. Micah, chapter 5, verses 3 through 5.
Right after chapter.
This is talking about what this ruler, who we know, Jesus, what he's going to do, like in the coming kingdom.
Therefore will he give them up until the time that she which traveleth hath brought forth. Then the remnant of his brethren shall return unto the children of Israel. He shall stand and feed in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God. Then they shall abide. For now shall he be great unto the ends of the earth. And this man shall be the peace. When the Assyrians shall come into our land, and when he shall tread in our palaces, then we shall rise against him 7 shepherds and 8 principal men.
Yeah, so what's being described there? What does this sound like?
I'll have to read again in normal English, so give me a second.
Where are we reading from? Micah
That was
1?
Micah 5,
Oh,
verses
5.
3 through 5.
I was like, there's no way we're in Micah 1. That's not. All right.
Therefore he shall give them up until the time when she who is in labor has given birth. Then the rest of his brothers shall return to the people of Israel. And he shall stand and shepherd his flock in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God, and they shall dwell secure, for now he shall be great to the end of the earth, and he shall be their peace. What's going on there? Who's he, first of all?
God.
Well, Jesus, yeah.
Jesus, yeah, the ruler who's coming, who's going to be born in Bethlehem. He shall give them up until the time when she who is in labor is given birth. Who's she who is in labor?
Mary.
There.
Israel?
Ooh.
Would it be? Well, if they're talking about Jesus, it would be Mary.
It is
Would
Israel.
it? Right?
But he's doing something, right, while she's giving birth, which would suggest that he's already been born and like growing and leading.
Is it Israel?
Well, it also says in verse 3, until the time when she who was in labor gives birth, and the rest of his brothers return to join the Israelites. What does that mean?
Yeah, good question. I don't know what this is talking about. This is yet future. We're talking about when the ruler comes, the one who's going to actually like rule. This is millennial kingdom stuff. At the very least, it's a second coming when Jesus returns.
Could it be like the has born a child be the gathering of believers from earth to sky or whatever?
Possibly.
Possible.
Interesting thought. I'm inclined to think that she who is in birth is Israel. And he shall shepherd his flock in the strength of the Lord is the church. And the rest of his brothers returning to the people of Israel is the church, returning to the, like,
So
Syncing up.
what would this child be? Is that the unknown part?
yeah, it doesn't fit totally, and I can't really explain this section of text. It gets even more confusing. Verse 6, and he shall be their peace. When the Assyrian comes into our land and treads in our palaces, then we will raise against him 7 shepherds and 8 mighty princes. And they shall shepherd the land of Assyria with the sword, and the land of Nimrod at its entrances, and he shall deliver us from the Assyrian when he comes into our land and treads within our border. All right. We don't have any like historical record when the Assyrians came in to Jerusalem of 7 shepherds and 8 princes doing any of this stuff. Shepherding with the sword, meaning tear them down, right?
Maybe it's talking about future.
Maybe it's talking about future. And that's what I'm inclined to think. The issue you run into then is all of the references to Assyria. Which, I mean, you answer that by saying, well, we're talking about the people of Assyria living in that land, but not necessarily going by the name Assyria. So Iraq, present-day Iraq. Or whatever nation is in the future, whenever this gets fulfilled, if it's still Iraq at that point. Yeah, again, I don't know. This section, verses 3 through 6, are like, don't know what he's talking about. Something's going to happen, and when it happens, I'm like, oh yeah, Micah 3 through 6. That's that. Okay. But
Yep. I'm getting a little bit of that too. It doesn't help that this is in Old English.
yeah, particularly reading the prophets, reading a good literal translation is helpful. It keeps going, verse 7, and the remnant of Jacob shall be in the midst of many peoples, like dew from the Lord, like showers on the grass, which delay not for a man, nor wait for the children of men. And the remnant of Jacob shall be among the nations, in the midst of many peoples, like a lion among the beasts of the forest, like a young lion among the flocks of sheep, which when it goes through treads down and tears in pieces, and there is none to deliver. your hand shall be lifted up over your adversaries, and all your enemies shall be cut off. So it's describing some time when Jerusalem or Judah or the Jews or Israel is in the midst of many peoples who are trying to kill them. Excuse me, in the midst of people's ruling them. Flip-flop, I'm thinking of a different time period. Like a lion in the midst of the beasts of the forest, like a young lion among the flocks of sheep. Which when it goes through, it treads down, tears in pieces, is in Judah's ruling. Right? Lion's king of the forest. Young lion is in charge of any sheep that are in a flock that he encounters. Right? This time period when the children of Israel are in charge of the world. Verse 10, and in that day, when the nation of Israel is like that, I will cut off your horses from among you, I will destroy your chariots, I will cut off the cities of your land, and throw down all your strongholds, and I will cut off sorceries from your hand, and you shall have no more tellers of fortunes, and I will cut off your carved images and your pillars from among you, and you shall bow down no more to the works of your hands, and I will root out your Asherah images from among you, and destroy your cities, and in anger and wrath I will execute vengeance on the nations that did not obey. Who's the you?
Nineveh? We're not there yet. No, that's Nahum. Never mind.
Yeah, that's Nahum. Seems like it's talking to Jacob.
The remnant of Jacob.
So that would be Israel.
Yeah, Israel.
And Jacob.
Which then sort of means like, okay, so the time period we're talking about is not yet future. It's probably back time of, say, Josiah or Uzziah, when they are in charge of things, kind of, and God then cuts them down for their idolatry. Again, like I said, chapter 5 is really confusing to me. Starts out with a clearly messianic prophecy, goes into some section that don't really know what time period he's talking about, and then the last part seems like he's talking about Israel just before they're being judged for their idolatry. So is he jumping around in time periods? That's possible. Prophets do that sometimes.
Or maybe he's not.
Maybe he's not. Maybe sometime in the future Israel will be top dog on the block, and then God's going to cut him down to size.
Well, doesn't it say in the Bible that Israel will be restored before in the end times?
Yeah. I mean, that's what we're reading, the remnant being gathered.
Yeah, so...
But most of
Israel
those
should be-
prophecies tend to paint it as like a remnant, as in they're not like top dog on the block. They're like struggling through and being
Just barely surviving.
just barely surviving until Christ returns and rules on earth with Israel. But in that case, they're not being idolatrous.
Did you?
So they're top dog on the block and they're idolatrous. He's going to cut them off for their idolatry. It's like, when is that going to happen? Unless it already has. Again, chapter 5 is confusing me. So. I can't really explain it because I don't understand it.
Well, as far as Israel goes in the prophecies, I mean, did you? So like, I don't know if anybody asked the question that I put in the group chat, but
No.
no one asked. Okay, but do you know the answer? Or do you not remember what I asked?
It was something about the fact that the capital is being moved back to Jerusalem officially by Trump, right?
Yes. So is that carry any weight or because it's him, or no? Because that's not his domain, like his.
I mean,
jurisdiction.
Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. Everyone has always
It just
recommended
wasn't like a-
Jerusalem's the capital of Israel. The fact that Trump is actually making serious moves to move the embassy to Jerusalem and recognize it as the capital is big news.
Okay.
I'm not willing to go out and say, oh yes, this is clearly fulfillment of end times prophecy. Trump must be the Antichrist, as some people are. But what I say is, look, we got to get there eventually. That's what the prophets say is going to happen.
Get there
So,
soon.
yeah. This very well could be priming the pumps, setting the stage for the end times to occur.
If Trump is the Antichrist, I'll be sorely disappointed.
I mean, if
I
he
could care less.
in the next if he
Poor dad.
so here's what I'm thinking. He's gonna have to in the next couple of months
Do like a bunch
make a
of stuff.
firm peace treaty with Israel for the remainder of his term. He'll
Let's take down the picture.
do 7 years, right? 3 years and then 4 more years if he's reelected. That would be to me okay, this is eerie, and then I'd have to probably change my view to being a mid-tribulational rapturist because I would have expected we'd be gone by then. So,
That's
Anyway.
exciting to me.
yeah.
End time stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you can see essentially the pieces are all starting to arrange themselves on the board.
You mean now
Well,
currently
they're
or
not-
back
yeah,
then?
they're-
Like the way they
No,
set it
not
up?
current.
They're now currently
Like what? Like,
the fact that again Jerusalem being recognized as the capital
oh, okay.
and Trump actually taking a firm interest in promoting peace between Israel and Palestine. That's what's expected to kick off the end times. Daniel's 70-week prophecy in chapter 9 of Daniel is that the prince who is to come, the prince who is to come, that's what he calls him in Daniel, will make a firm treaty with the many. I think that means Israel for 1 week, 7 years probably. And that last week, 7 years, is what we would call the tribulation, and we'd say that's what Revelation is describing. So that's kind of like it kicks off the end times. All of the things that are supposed to happen at the end times, according to our theological system, get kicked off by some guy making a peace treaty with Israel for 7 years.
But it is just some guy. It's not supposed to be a specific group.
Yeah, it's some guy. He's described in plenty of different ways: the man of lawlessness, the little horn, the beast. Revelation
But it's not the Antichrist.
13.
Or it is.
Antichrist. That'd be another name that
Oh,
goes
okay.
by. That's the least biblical of the names that he goes by.
Yeah, that's okay.
So, man of lawlessness is the clear. That's 2 Thessalonians. That's what I usually call him. Yeah, and that's got to happen. So, could it be Trump? Yes. Do I think it's Trump? No, but
I
could
can't
be
see
wrong.
people following Trump.
Me either. I mean,
I couldn't see
technically
him get
they did,
elected.
but
Getting elected though.
Yeah,
So.
nobody saw him get elected either.
Anyway, let's get back into the text. Chapter 6. Let me actually. That's right. Chapter 6 is another sort of restatement of what's already been said in Micah. Like, you've been idolatrous, and so you're going to be punished. Hear now what the Lord is saying. So, verses 3 through 5, he recounts his own faithfulness. And verses 7 through 8, he sort of expresses what pleases him, and then he sort of lays into the judgment after that. So listen. Hear what the Lord says. Arise, plead your case before the mountains, and let the hills hear your voice. Hear, you mountains, the indictment of the Lord, you enduring foundation of the earth. For the Lord has an indictment against his people, and he will contend with Israel. O my people, what have I done to you? How have I wearied you? Answer me. For I brought you up from the land of Egypt and redeemed you from the house of slavery. I set before you Moses, Aaron, Miriam. O my people, remember what Balak, king of Moab, devised, and what Balaam, son of Beor, answered him, and what happened from Shittim to Gilgal, that you may know the righteous acts of the Lord. With what shall I come before the Lord, and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has told you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. Probably recognize that last verse. Again,
Just
a
a
very
little.
famous one. So what's his point? What's God saying to the people of Israel? Yeah, repent. A little bit more specifically, how is he saying repent
God
in this
wants
section?
you to, like, stopping doing the things that.
Yeah. And look, he's saying, look, the sacrifices aren't like the point. The point is what's behind the sacrifices. If you're going to come before me with thousands of rams, rivers of oil, all these things that are required for them to do the rituals of the temple, making sacrifices, even if you sacrifice your own son, that's not the point. The point is for you to know me, to walk with me. What am I like? Well, I'm just. I love mercy. I'm humble. This is what I want from you. This is the attitude. This is the motivation behind the works that you have. This translates into the Christian message exactly perfectly. The point of life is to know and love God. The stuff that follows, the good works that often identify someone as a Christian, and I use that phrase sparingly, are not the things that make you a Christian. It's loving and enjoying and walking with God that makes you a Christian. We'll keep going. The voice of the Lord cries to the city, it is sound wisdom to fear your name, hear the rod and of him who appointed it. Can I forget any longer the treasures of wickedness in the house of the wicked, and the scant measures that is accursed? Shall I acquit the man with wicked scales and with a bag of deceitful weights? Your rich men are full of violence, your inhabitants speak lies, and their tongue is deceitful in their mouths. Therefore I will strike you with a grievous blow, make you desolate because of your sins. You shall eat, but not be satisfied, and there shall be hunger within you. You shall put away, but not preserve, and what you preserve I will give to the sword. You shall sow, but not reap. You shall tread olives, but not anoint yourselves with oil. You shall tread grapes, but not drink wine. Here's where he kind of sums it up. Judgment's coming. That's what all of those verses basically said. But here's where he sums it up. For you have kept the statutes of Omri, and all the works of the house of Ahab, and you have walked in their counsel, that I may make you a desolation and your inhabitants a hissing, so that you shall bear the scorn of my people. Who are Omri and Ahab?
Kings.
Yeah, kings.
Kings of what?
Judah.
Israel in the north, right? They're the bad kings. You're doing like they did. You're becoming idolatrous, wicked people. And that's why this is happening. The reason for the judgment that's coming? Idolatry. As in, not walking humbly with your God. Chapter 7 is a lament and then hope for the nation. He does the oi, woe is me. For I have become as when the summer fruit has been gathered, as when the grapes have been gleaned. There is no cluster to eat, no first ripe fig that my soul desires. The godly has perished from the earth, and there is no one upright among mankind. They all lie in wait for blood, and each hunts the other with a net. There's nobody good. Everybody's killing each other. No one loves God. Their hands are on what is evil to do it well. The prince and the judge ask for a bribe. The great man utters the evil desires of his soul. Thus they weave it together. The best of them is like a briar. The most upright of them, a thorn hedge. The day of your watchmen, of your punishment has come. Now their confusion is at hand. Put no trust in a neighbor. Have no confidence in a friend. Guard the doors of your mouth for her who lies in your arms. For the son treats the father with contempt. The daughter rises up against her mother. The daughter-in-law rises against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies are the men of his own house. But as for me, I will look to the Lord. I will wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me. Rejoice not over me, O my enemy. When I fall, I shall rise. When I sit in darkness, the Lord will be a light to me. I will bear the indignation of the Lord because I have sinned against him until he pleads my cause and executes judgment for me. He will bring me out to the light. I shall look upon his vindication. He's talking about the gospel. You guys hear that? I will wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me. Rejoice not over me when I fall. I shall rise. Resurrection. When I sit in the darkness, the Lord will be a light to me. Again, John 1. I will bear the indignation of the Lord because I have sinned against him until he pleads my case and executes judgment for me. He will take my judgment away. Not because I earned it, not because I did anything for it, but just because he's God. And I shall look upon his vindication. His vindication named Jesus. Last little bit, read 18 through 20. Somebody read 18 through 20 for me. I will. Yeah.
Who is a God like you, who pardons iniquity and passes over the rebellious act of the remnant of his possession? He does not retain his anger forever, because he delights in unchanging love. He will again have compassion on us. He will tread our iniquities underfoot. Yes, you will cast all your sins into the depths of the sea. You will give truth to Jacob and unchanging love to Abraham, which you swore to our forefathers from the days of old.
What two things are promised, and why does Micah rely on them?
Well, he promises to perform truth to Jacob and mercy to Abraham because God promised it.
There you go. So yeah, he says it a couple different ways, but steadfast love and compassion, forgiveness. And the reason,
Yeah, he will have compassion again.
the reason is verse 20. As you have sworn to our fathers from the days of old. Why are you going to do it? Because you said you would. That I'm recognizing that God's saying is his doing. He said he was going to do it. That means he's done it. He will have compassion on those whom he will have compassion. Exodus 34. That's going to be... There's a few chapters in the Bible, a few things in the Bible, particularly in the Old Testament, that you should just know forwards and backwards. Genesis chapter 3. What's in that chapter?
The promise.
The fall and the promise. Right. 3:15 is the seed of the woman, seed of the serpent. Deuteronomy 28 through 32. It's a big one. That one you should just go read. It's Moses' song and the blessings and curses for Israel. Deuteronomy 28 through 32 lays out the entire story and prophesies everything that's going to happen to Israel up to and including Jesus coming and what's going to happen afterward. Exodus 3. You know what happens in Exodus 3? Let's think through. What's the book of Exodus about?
Exodus.
Right, it starts out with Moses.
No.
What does Moses do? He grows up in Pharaoh's household, then he kills a guy and he runs off.
He lives in the desert for 40 years.
The burning bush happens.
Burning bush. Burning bush is chapter 3 of Exodus. When God reveals himself and his name and his character to Moses. And then, even more specifically, he reveals himself and his name and his character to Moses in a phrase that's repeated multiple times throughout the prophets, and we just saw it here. Exodus 34.
I am.
That's Exodus 3. Exodus 34 is, I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, but I will by no means forgive the wicked his transgression. I am the Lord, steadfast in loving kindness and compassion and mercy. He defines himself as full of love, steadfast kindness, mercy, compassion, but just, not forgiving the iniquities of the unrighteous, but visiting them upon them to the generations and the generations after them. This balance of justice, wrath, and mercy, and this is who God is, how he defines himself. Exodus 34 is a big section. And then, of course, the Gospels, Jesus coming. But really, if you understand those ones at the beginning, well, the rest makes sense.